Let's dive into one of the thorniest conflicts in recent history, I guess you could say, the Jammu and Kashmir dispute.
Yeah.
And we're looking at a document straight from the Pakistani Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Right.
So this is like getting their official stance.
Yeah, what's so interesting is it's more than just Pakistan's view. They
Yeah.
really go into, alleged human rights violations, and they make this plea to the world to take action.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back at all.
Right.
But before we get into all that,
Sure.
could you give us like a little background on the whole Jammu and Kashmir thing?
Of course.
Just level set for, anyone who might not be totally familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. So the roots of this conflict, they go way back to 1947 when British India was partitioned, creating, the independent nations of India and Pakistan.
Right.
And both countries, they laid claim to this region of Jammu and Kashmir, which at the time, it was a princely state with a mostly Muslim population.
Cool.
And so this led to, the first of several wars that they fought over the territory. And unfortunately, a lasting solution, it hasn't really been found.
So fast forward to today, and we have this document from the Pakistani government.
Right.
What are like some of the main things they're arguing?
Well, the first thing is that Pakistan sees Jammu and Kashmir as internationally recognized, quote, disputed territory, end quote.
Okay.
And they say this over and over again throughout this document.
Got it.
And they argue that what India's been doing, especially since 2019, has been against international law.
Okay.
And they say it's all about India trying to solidify their control over the region.
Now, you mentioned 2019. What happened then that was such a big deal?
So in 2019, India revoked Article 370 of its constitution, which had given Jammu and Kashmir this special status,
Okay.
And so that meant that the region had some autonomy, like it had its own constitution, and they could make their own laws. But India then went and divided the state into two union territories, which are basically federally administered regions with less autonomy.
Okay, so taking away that special status and messing with like the administrative structure really shook things up.
Yeah.
I could see why Pakistan sees that as a power grab.
Exactly. And to make things even worse, Pakistan claims that India is not just doing this for control.
Right.
They say it's part of a bigger plan to change who lives in the region.
Okay.
By encouraging Hindus to move into this area that's traditionally been mostly Muslim.
So they're saying India is trying to like shift the balance of power on the ground, literally.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this is where things get more complicated and honestly a bit disturbing.
Yeah.
Pakistan is accusing India of really widespread human rights abuses.
Yeah. The document doesn't shy away from that at all.
No, not at all.
What kind of abuses are they specifically talking about?
So they list things like extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrests, and torture, as well as limits on freedom of religion and freedom of expression.
Wow.
They even call out specific laws, like the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which they think gives the military way too much power and lets these abuses happen without any consequences.
It's a really harsh picture they're painting.
It is.
But are these just accusations, or is there actually evidence?
Well, Pakistan refers to UN Human Rights Council reports from 2018 and 2019, and those reports also documented these alleged human rights violations.
Okay.
And these reports, they describe this climate of fear and repression, where people who say they've suffered at the hands of Indian security forces, they can't really get justice.
So we're seeing a pattern here, not just Pakistan saying things, but international organizations raising concerns too.
Exactly. And Pakistan is using these reports to strengthen their case.
Okay.
They're saying, look, this isn't just our opinion. Other people are seeing these same worrying things.
Right. Okay. So they've laid out their historical and legal points. They've highlighted these human rights worries, and they've shown us some evidence.
Right.
What's their next move?
They appeal to, you could say, a higher power, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or the OIC.
Ah, the OIC. So this is becoming a bigger conversation now.
Yeah.
Involving the whole Muslim world.
Exactly. Pakistan's not alone in this. They've been actively seeking support from the OIC, which has a long history of advocating for the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination.
And I'm guessing the document points to that history as like more proof that they have a legitimate claim.
Exactly. They include this whole list of OIC resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir, showing how the organization has always supported their position.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, hey, this isn't just between India and Pakistan. This matters to a lot of people.
And I imagine that makes things even more complex.
It does.
What happens when you have a local conflict getting tied up with religion and geopolitics?
Yeah.
It feels like the stakes are getting a lot higher.
They definitely are, and those stakes become even clearer when we look at what Pakistan wants from the international community.
Okay.
It's a call to action that could really change things, not just in the region, but beyond.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
What are they asking for?
Well, first of all, they want India to completely reverse everything they've done since 2019.
Okay.
Which means reinstating Article 370.
Okay.
Restoring Jammu and Kashmir's special status, and undoing that whole division into union territories.
That's a big ask.
It is.
Basically asking India to backtrack on years of policy.
Yeah, but they don't stop there.
Oh, okay.
They also want all the alleged human rights abuses to end. They want political prisoners to be released. And maybe most importantly, they want those UN Security Council resolutions we talked about, they want them implemented.
Okay, so they're saying the world needs to step in and hold India accountable.
Right.
What are the chances of that actually happening?
That's a tough question, and it's where we have to start thinking about the difficulties of international intervention.
Yeah.
The Jammu and Kashmir dispute has been a problem for global diplomacy for decades.
Yeah.
It really has.
Well, we've definitely laid the groundwork for a really interesting discussion here.
We have.
And I think this is a good spot to take a pause and really think about what we've learned.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as particularly significant from this document?
You know, what really strikes me is the passion that comes through in how Pakistan presents their case. You know,
yeah.
It's not just legal arguments. They're painting this picture of people that they believe are being wronged, and it's a picture full of historical grievances and anxieties about what's happening right now.
It's clear that for them, this isn't just about territory.
Yeah.
It's a matter of justice.
Exactly. And that feeling of urgency, that sense that things are about to boil over, it's in every part of this document.
It makes you wonder what could happen if this conflict just keeps going.
It really does, and that's the question we need to look at next, because this isn't just a disagreement about history on a map.
Right.
It has the power to affect millions of lives and really reshape the entire region.
Yeah.
Really reshape it. I mean, the potential consequences of all this tension are huge.
Right.
Like, first of all, this whole Jammu and Kashmir thing, it's been like a flashpoint between India and Pakistan for decades. 3 out of their 4 wars have been fought over this region.
Yeah.
And there have been so many smaller clashes along the line of control, which is basically the border that divides the territory.
And it's not just the history. I mean, I remember reading that both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
It just makes everything way more dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, when you add nuclear weapons to the mix, this goes from being a regional dispute to a possible global crisis.
Right.
Any escalation could be catastrophic, not just for them, but for the whole world.
It's a scary thought.
It is.
Beyond the threat of actual war.
Yeah.
Are there other things we should be worried about?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what about the economic impact?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This conflict is costing both India and Pakistan a ton of money.
Right.
They're spending so much on their militaries and border security.
Yeah.
Money that could be used for, education, healthcare, infrastructure.
And what about the people of Jammu and Kashmir themselves?
Right.
They're stuck in the middle of all this.
They are, and the human cost of this dispute is impossible to measure.
Yeah.
I mean, generations of Kashmiris have grown up with this conflict. They've faced violence. They've been displaced. They've struggled economically.
Right.
Their voices often get lost in all the political stuff.
Yeah.
But their experiences are really key to understanding what this is all about.
It's a good reminder that behind all the legal talk and the politics, there are actual people whose lives are deeply affected by this.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that there are different perspectives within Jammu and Kashmir itself.
Right.
Pakistan talks about the right to self-determination for Kashmiris.
Yeah.
But there are lots of different views within the region.
Okay.
Some groups want complete independence, some want to join Pakistan, and some want to stay with India, but with more autonomy.
So it sounds like there's no simple solution.
No.
No one answer that will make everyone happy.
That's exactly the challenge, figuring out how to deal with all these different claims, dealing with the historical grievances, and making sure everyone is safe and taken care of.
Right.
It's a huge task.
We've mostly focused on Pakistan's side of things.
Right.
Which makes sense given the document we're looking at.
Of course.
But what about India?
Yeah.
How do they justify what they're doing?
Well, India's argument is that Jammu and Kashmir is a fundamental part of their country.
Okay.
And that what they're doing, including revoking Article 370, is an internal matter.
Okay.
They say it's about strengthening their national security and helping the region develop economically.
So they're framing it as like a necessary step to keep things stable.
Exactly. And they often talk about the threat of terrorism coming from the parts of Kashmir that Pakistan controls as a reason for their security measures.
Okay.
They say Pakistan supports militant groups there, which Pakistan, of course, denies.
So it's a classic case of like, he said, she said.
Yeah.
Each side blaming the other for making things worse.
Exactly. And trying to figure out the truth, separating the facts from the propaganda, that's essential if we want to move past the blame game and actually have a real conversation.
It seems like both sides are really dug in.
They are.
Which makes compromise really hard.
Yeah.
And then you have all this pressure from international actors.
Right.
Pakistan wants intervention.
Yeah.
But is that even realistic?
It's hard to say.
Can outsiders really influence something this deep-rooted?
It's the million-dollar question. You know, Pakistan wants the international community to get involved.
Yeah.
But India sees that as meddling in their business.
Right.
So finding some kind of neutral ground for mediation, it's incredibly tough.
It's like trying to untangle a giant knot.
Yeah.
Every time you pull on one thread, another one tightens.
Perfect analogy. And that's why what Pakistan is doing in this document is so interesting. They're laying out these specific demands, like a roadmap for how they think the world should react.
It's a bold move.
It is.
Putting those demands out there so clearly.
Yeah.
But is it more of a strategy?
Yeah.
Or do they actually believe the world will do something?
That's the question. Are they trying to pressure India by getting the world to condemn them?
Right.
Or are they really hoping that outside help can lead to a solution?
And then there's the bigger question of whether any solution is possible.
Right.
Without addressing the underlying reasons for the conflict.
Right.
It's been going on for like over 70 years.
I know.
Can you really just erase all that and start over?
It's definitely a challenge. And it takes us back to how complicated peace building really is.
Yeah.
It's not just about signing agreements or drawing new borders.
Yeah.
It's about dealing with the past, rebuilding trust, and figuring out ways to coexist peacefully.
It sounds like a long and difficult process. With no guarantee that it'll work.
That's true, but the alternative, more conflict, maybe even escalation, that's just not acceptable.
I'm really feeling the weight of this conversation.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the history and the diplomacy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, this is about the lives of millions of people.
It is, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to engage with these issues.
Yeah.
To try to understand the different perspectives and to look for a path towards a more peaceful and just future.
So we've looked at Pakistan's perspective.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of India's counter-arguments.
Right.
And we've thought about what could happen if nothing changes.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways so far? What seems especially significant to you?
What really stands out to me is the sense of urgency in this document from Pakistan. It's a plea for the world to see their grievances and to actually do something, whether or not their demands are met.
Right.
The message is clear. Things can't stay the same. Something has to change.
It's a powerful reminder that even when it seems like the world doesn't care, there are people who are crying out for justice.
Yeah.
Who want their voices to be heard.
Exactly. And that's why these conversations are so important. They force us to face these hard truths, to question what we think we know, and to really consider the human cost of these conflicts that seem impossible to solve.
They also make you realize how much we don't know.
We do.
How much more there is to learn. It's humbling.
It is. And that humility is so important. It's where real understanding and meaningful conversation begin.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored Pakistan's perspective.
We have.
Touched on India's counter-arguments.
Right.
And considered what could happen if nothing is done.
But now I'm wondering, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we go from just understanding the problem to actually thinking about possible solutions?
That's the challenge.
It is.
And that's where we need to focus now as we wrap up our deep dive into this complex and crucial issue, it feels like we keep coming back to this idea of solutions.
Yeah.
But every path seems blocked by like decades of mistrust,
right,
and everyone wanting different things.
It's true.
Is there any hope for a resolution?
Yeah.
That deals with like both the historical stuff
right.
and the current situation on the ground?
It's a really tough job, no question.
Yeah.
But history shows us that even the most like dug in conflicts, they can be resolved if people talk, if they compromise.
Yeah.
And if they're willing to imagine a different future.
Easier said than done, I guess. Yeah. Especially when you have, countries with nuclear weapons.
Of course.
Just kind of like facing each other down.
But think about this.
Okay.
Both India and Pakistan, they benefit from stability in the region.
Yeah.
The cost of this conflict economically and in terms of human life, it's just not sustainable in the long run.
So you're saying that like wanting to survive, maybe even just being practical about money, that could push them to actually negotiate.
Exactly. And there are examples all over the world where conflicts that seemed impossible to solve, they were resolved because of pressure from within and help from mediators outside.
Okay, so let's say, just for the sake of argument, that both sides, they agree to talk.
Okay.
What would a realistic plan for peace even look like?
Well, it would have to be multifaceted, you know. First and foremost, they need a ceasefire along the line of control.
Okay.
That's essential to create some stability.
Yeah.
And reduce the risk of things escalating.
That makes sense. You can't really have a productive conversation when there's like shooting going on in the background.
Exactly. And then you need confidence building measures,
Okay.
Releasing political prisoners.
Okay.
Easing restrictions on movement and communication.
Okay.
Letting people from both sides actually interact across the line of control.
So basically like create an environment where dialogue can actually happen without the threat of violence.
Exactly. And then you've got to tackle the core issues, the whole question of self-determination, the territorial claims, and the very real worries about human rights.
Okay, but how do you even start to address those things when both sides see their claims as non-negotiable?
It would take a willingness to think differently.
Yeah.
To move beyond this zero-sum game that's been going on for so long.
Right.
Maybe they could explore some kind of shared sovereignty.
Okay.
Or joint administration.
Yeah.
Where you have more autonomy within a framework that respects both India and Pakistan's concerns.
That sounds incredibly complicated.
It would be.
But I guess anything less wouldn't really solve the problem.
It would be complex for sure, and you would need really skilled mediators, maybe from the UN or other neutral parties, to help with the conversations and bridge the gaps.
It also seems like the international community would need to do more.
Yeah.
Not just like mediating,
right,
but also dealing with the humanitarian crisis.
Absolutely. More aid, more investment in healthcare, education, economic development.
Yeah.
Those things would be crucial for rebuilding trust.
Right.
And creating a more hopeful future for the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
So it's not just about like the high-level politics. It's about helping the people who've been most affected by this.
Exactly. And that's why what the Pakistani document says about human rights is so important.
Yeah.
It reminds us that any solution, it has to put the well-being and dignity of all Kashmiris first.
It's easy to get caught up in all the abstract talk about borders and who controls what.
Right.
But in the end, this is about people's lives.
It is.
Their hopes, their dreams for a peaceful future.
And their right to live safely.
Yeah.
Without fear and oppression, that's what should guide any solution, no matter how complicated the politics are.
Well, we started this deep dive by looking at Pakistan's perspective.
We did.
And it's taken us through history, legal arguments, and the very real human cost of this conflict.
And we've seen how something that seems like a regional dispute it could actually destabilize a whole region.
Right.
And even drag in global powers.
But even with all the complexity and how hard it seems to solve, we've also seen glimpses of what a different future could be.
Yeah.
A future where people talk instead of fight.
Right.
And where the needs of the people are more important than political games.
It's a future worth fighting for.
It is.
A future that needs our attention, our empathy, and our willingness to engage with these tough and complicated issues.
So as we wrap up, we're not just left with a sense of the challenges, but also with a bit of hope. A recognition that even in the worst situations, people can still find a way to make peace.
And reconcile.
And a reminder that all of us, in our own way, can contribute to that process.
Whether it's through, informed conversations like this, or through our actions as global citizens.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope it's made you curious and encouraged you to learn more about this really important issue.